And I don't have the radius for you, but stay with me, stay close to me. Yeah, perfect. Stay here. Then after this we go to the Last Supper. Another thing is interesting about shapes and numbers. It's normal, and you say every church is like that. But first of all, this church, this part of the church was made for the Duke. The Duke was the patron of Leonardo da Vinci, was the patron of the arts, was the defender of the religious order, because the Dominican friars were given the allowance to make this monastery after the will and the allowance of the leave of the Duke, father of Leonardo's patron. Leonardo's patron's name was Ludwig Maria Sforza, nicknamed the Moor because his skin was dark, his hair was dark. He got the power killing his elder brother and his nephew. And he had problems to be legitimated to rule the duchy instead than his nephew. Then he did all of his possible things to get this title. At the end, he bought the title of Duke from the Emperor of Germany, Maximilian I of Habsburg. When he got that, he began the building of the church. He already began to make it a change. But the very year of his putting of the Duke, a scholar has noticed that if you join that corner with the opposite one, with the diagonal, and you extend the diagonal northwestward, it hits the middle point of the Last Supper wall. The room of the Last Supper is perpendicular to the orientation of this aisle. At the bottom of the church is to the right. You've seen at the entrance before, I showed some of you. Well, it's a kind of L. If you extend this diagonal, the line hits. Then this diagonal line links the body of the Duke to the body of Jesus, who is in the middle of the wall of the Last Supper. You will see that Jesus' shape is an equilateral triangle. And he turns his face to the left, with the left hand turned to the sky, in sign of invitation. Come on. The Duke was never buried here, because he was captured by the King of France, who had the rights of succession. As French people have often been involved with the Milan story. There was another one quite famous, whose name was Napoleon, who led a lot of tracks in Milan. You can say that it was one of his capitals in Europe. But anyway, he was captured by Louis XII. He was sent to France, where he died in captivity in 1508. They say that only later, but it's not sure, his body was brought back to Milan and buried in the choir, where already was named his wife, who died giving birth. Before then, Milan were captured, were like conquered by the King of France in 1499. One of the keys of the understanding of all is also the light that now is missing. But indeed, this strange decoration of the arches, these chariot wheels, could be metaphorical symbols of the sunlight. The first two ones that start from the beginning of the arch are off, because they represent dawn, moon, and sunset. That is the metaphor of the human life in four sides, because 4 is the number of the human dimension. It's a irrational and transcendent number. There is a number that can't be transformed into a linear shape. But Leonardo didn't know it, and he tried, because if he had succeeded, he would have transformed a divine proportion into a human one. That is the mystery of the Trinity for Christians. Indeed, he participated to the publishing of a book written by a friend of him who was a Franciscan friar, but a mathematician, whose name was Luca Pacioli, and the title of this book was About the Divine Proportion. That was one of the points of Leonardo's investigation. Now we are going to the Last Supper, and you will realize that even there is full of references to geometry and to numbers. It's one of the things about. One watches the Last Supper doesn't realize, but if you watch with more care, you will see. I will try to show you that, of course, everything could be then criticized and denied. For Leonardo da Vinci, you know, they wrote 1,000 books for one version and more 1,000 books for the opposite one. Four numbers, enter. That's all. Yeah. To unlock will be unlock the same four numbers, enter. Yeah. Okay, try now. You know this. To be his father, but paying for him. Can you hear me? I was saying this story about Leonardo's childhood. That is a great case that Leonardo became a genius because his father was a lawyer, but his mother was very humble, and his father married again, but he didn't have other children, so he paid the instruction of Leonardo in Florence. And it's because of this, because his father, Piero da Vinci, didn't have other children. If he had other children, Leonardo would have been maybe a peasant or a pork guardian. Maybe he would have invented something interesting for cows and animals, for sure. But nothing more. Let's go inside now. You can go. I think. So, wait. On a plaster, on wet plaster, it's very resistant. The reason why it's so broken is because Milan and even Last Supper were bombed in a very wide way by the English Air Force. Not that the English were target. War is war, and often they overtakes every limit. It's not that the Italians were good or better than the others. Anyway, that was to destroy Milan. Milan must be destroyed because it was the most developed town of Italy. And they wanted to teach the Italians that it was time to change. To change from Hitler to the Allied forces, who in the meantime had landed in Sicily. And the king learned it, and he signed the alliance after the destruction of Milan. In the beginning of September 1943, he signed the alliance with the Allied forces. And he fled away. He was a very brave-hearted man. He was the king of the two world wars, Victor Emmanuel III of Savoy. And he went to southern Italy. But anyway, that's finished with Milan. Milan was a kind of rubble, so you will see here. Now we are here. This is our position. We have passed behind this wall in the corridor where we began to talk. Now we will walk this line. This is the corridor. Here. And the Last Supper is here, opposite the crucifixion of Jesus Christ that you can see here. That's a fresco. And even if it was exposed to the exterior environment for a long time, for months, it has very well resisted. It's still there. But there is an ocean of distance, of difference between even if we will enter all in time, they won't open the next door until the end of the former shift. So every shift lasts 15 minutes, and only at the end of the shift they will open the door, and we will have also 15 minutes of time inside. So Leonardo got a great success at the end. At the end of 4 years of work, he began painting in 1494. He finished in February 1498. And at the end it was a great result. So it's also big pain at home one was. Videos are not allowed inside. No videos, only pictures.
No videos, unfortunately.
Of John and Matthew, it's written that Jesus said, that's a traitor model. And Peter, because he was the leader of the apostles, he didn't dare talking to Jesus directly, because whenever he said something, he was wrong. So he preferred calling John to his attention. And he lays his hand on John's shoulder, who bends his neck to listen to his call. To Peter. And Peter tells John, you that are the best friend of Jesus, ask him who is the traitor. John will do. Jesus won't say Judas, but will say, is the one who is going to touch into my own plate. Look at the right hand of Jesus. The right hand of Jesus is touching the plate. Isn't there another hand that's going to touch the same plate with almost the same movement? Yes, that's the hand of Judas. So there are Jesus, John, Peter, Judas. But you could have recognized Judas even without knowing it. Because he's the only one who was famous. He's in the shade. And the dark was very attentive to the light and the shade. Because for Milan, the light represents the royal title, the ducal title. The symbol that represented the Duke of Milan was the sun, the head. Even because if that were a woman instead of a man, would the Dominican friars had allowed it? They were very strict, they were very attentive and cultivated. And of course, even if they were the ultimate patrons of this faith, they controlled its execution. And here Prague was often everything here. He was a confessor. So it's impossible that that person for the Sabbath. If I take you to the Church of St. Paul's here, at least 4 times, John is represented in the same features. If you go to the Church of the Lord, there is a John painting in the 14th century that looked like a curve. Everywhere. And even in that fresco, even if it's not painted with the same praise, the person on our right hand side, it's contemporary that was finished in 1495, 3 years before another summer. The person on our right is standing with a purple mantle and a yellow coat, with blonde hair, with a joined hands. It's John. Because that was a standard, a pattern. John was always like this. Like the angels. But if you see the angels, are if they aren't playing an instrument, they are like this.
Is it known why Leonardo da Vinci used that as a backdrop?
Used
Used the backdrop with the windows.
Leonardo da Vinci always opened the landscapes in the background of his portraits or his that's the landscape that we recognized in the first the footings of the Alps along the Reef. No, there are someone that pretends to be imagination. At the exit here, there are bathrooms. But if you go to the bathrooms immediately, please, before to go, give me back your radios, because otherwise then it's clear for me. So, before to get out, this room, I ask you to give me back your devices, because I will go on giving some information for a few minutes, a few more minutes. Please get it? Okay. Oh, everybody. So, here again. This is the room of the Last Supper, with the wall of the Last Supper, with a scaffolding that preserved it from the impact of the rocks. And this is the construction of the Leonardo called these portraits heads of characters. What does it mean? It's not important if they were or not portraits. For Leonardo, they were patterns, expression of different spirits that are materialized in different features. This kind of science is called physiognomic, and Leonardo was a strong believer of this. There is to remove the layer of fake colors from each of the tapestries because it would have been too long. Don't forget that it took 22 years to do this restoration. So they were concentrated on this part. The walls, here for example, they found that the nails on which the tapestries are hanging project a shade on the wall, because Leonardo calculated the inclination of the light, and in relation with this he painted the correct projection of the shade of each thing. Even the tablecloth, you see, that seems to just have been unfolded on the table. Then there are doubts about the embroidery that decorates it. There are some say that it's original of Leonardo's style because it corresponds to a particular kind of decoration of embroideries of which Leonardo was expert also. And then he reported on the tablecloth. Others that say that was made after. That's hard to say everything. I finished with this. I went out in 2015 from an exhibition dedicated to Leonardo here in Milan. I was followed by, I met at Cross, the organizer of the exhibition is one of the greatest experts of Leonardo. His name is Pietro Marati. And he heard me and said, okay, yeah, it's good. And then I crossed, and there was another person who was following me, and at the end of the tour he told me, where did you find all of your, it wasn't of the group, it was out. Where did you find all of your information? I said, from books, and then everything is wrong. You weren't right in anything. I'm the greatest expert of Leonardo in the world, but nobody admits it. His name is Alessandro Magnani, if you want to look on it. And he began to explaining me things. Then he also told me that he was just excused from the group of the Italian scientific journalists. It was just excused from him. But anyway, he pretended to be the greatest expert of Leonardo da Vinci. So, there are documents, there are like many witnesses, but then it's always hard saying that's for sure like this, that's for sure like that. For the nature of John, we are quite sure. Of course, they are homosexual. No? They said, of course, Leonardo was homosexual because they are the best. Okay, this is the present way.